dealing with con after dark. You dealing with con after dark. Con after you dealing with. They don't wanna see me when it start getting dark. Start getting dark. When it start getting dark. They don't wanna see me when it start getting dark. Start getting dark. When it start getting dark. You dealing with con after dark. You dealing with con after dark. You dealing with. Another side and alter ego. We like to keep beneath the surface when we talk to people. That black germ is righteous, but that brown germ is evil. That means it's a part of me that you don't wanna see, bro. I'm nice and I'm polite. I'm respectable.
That thing go hard.
The Lord is good, God is great.
You wanna get it?
Also a murderer, disturbing you.
Text music at 219-299-49. Young Con of Dime, man.
I'm borderline psychotic.
Song called Con After Dark. Got to have you gotta have your own theme music.
The minute I start ripping apart marks, who gon' stop?
You don't need this, I'm telling you.
Real when I'm at your grill, it won't be no
you dealing with
con after dark.
You dealing with
con after dark.
Yeah.
Con after dark.
Yeah.
Con after dark.
Yeah.
Con after dark. They don't wanna see me when it start getting dark. Start getting dark when it start getting dark.
Hey man, that's all I'm gonna give you right now, man. Y'all ain't ready for it, man. Y'all ain't ready for it, man. Make some noise. One time, Con After Dark is in the building, and we are back, man. They thought that I wasn't coming back, but guess what, y'all? I'm back with another fire episode, and I got a special guest in the building. I'm talking about somebody that's tried and true, man. That been 10 toes down from day one, man. This is somebody that you're gonna want to know. So y'all strap in. For those of you that don't know, I go by the name of Young Con of Dime. Con is an acronym that stands for killing haters and non-believers. And the first hater that you got to kill, the first non-believer that you got to kill is the one sitting inside of yourself. So they call me Con After Dark. I come after the darkness of your dark thinking. I come after the darkness of the wrong things going on in your mind, man. So you need light after the dark, and that's where Con comes in at. Of course, I got to give a shout out to the triple OG, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who recently just turned 90 years young. That's the real Young Con. I'm the baby Young Con of Dime. So shout out to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, man. So this is another episode of Con After Dark, and I got a special guest that I'm geared to introduce to y'all, man. He got an awesome story. The man, I've been recommended to talk to him, so I'm going to learn in real time like some of y'all going to learn in real time. But they say game recognize game, but I'm going to call this podcast Game Recognize Big Game. So y'all give it up without any further ado. One time for your mind, my man in the building, better known as Big Game. Y'all make some noise. One time, Big Game. How you feeling, bro?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Hey, man, first of all, I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to have you up in this thing. I know this is like a new experience for you, but we, as OGs, as they like to call us, I don't call us original gangsters. I call us original gods, because you can't do nothing without God in your life. So I was asked by Mr. Miyagi, a.k.a. Brother Corey, that he said you should talk to this brother right here, man. He got an awesome story, Con, and I think, man, that y'all would make a good podcast. I said, well, say less. So we got on the phone, we chopped it up, we had a brief introduction, and you told me a little bit about yourself, but I say I could just tell by the way that we vibing on the phone that it's going to be a good one. So I think you should say what you want to tell me and give it to me in real time, so as I get it, the people get it. So without any further ado, before we jump into it, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to formally introduce yourself to some and reintroduce yourself to others. For those that don't know who you are, tell the people your name and what you got going on.
I'm Anthony Alexander. I'm from Gary, Indiana, born and bred in the concrete jungle. My name, Big Game, that come from a while ago, back in the 90s, early 90s. I got a cousin named Gator. We went through some things back then. A couple of situations happened, and after I got out of the situation, one day he looked at me and he said, "You know what?" He said, "You got more." He said, "You got more game than Parker Brothers." He said, "I'm gonna call you Big Game." And from that day on, Big Game was born, and it's been ever since then. Most people on the streets, they know me by Ant. That's what I went by. They called me Little Ant, Little Black Ant. But Big Game, that went on with me when I went to the joint. Shortly after he gave me that name, I ended up catching my first Fed case. 1992, they gave me 10 years. I was facing a mandatory 10, and that's what they gave me. And off of that 10, I did my almost 8 years.
Because you had to do 85%.
Right. You do it 85%. I end up applying for the RDAP program. That's Residential Drug Abuse Treatment Program.
Okay.
You can get a year off of that.
Yeah.
I end up getting about 7 months off. They were a little crowded back then. So I got my 7 months off, and I end up getting out about May of 2000.
Okay. So you got out in 2000, but you said that was your first Fed case. So that means it was more than one.
Yeah, that was the one I just came home from. I've been incarcerated twice, both federal cases. Went to trial on both of them. First one I went to
You
trial.
took them to trial?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. You playing big boy game right there. They got a conviction rate of 98.7%.
That's because most people take probably out of that 98%, 96 of them took plea bargains.
They talking.
Yeah, I mean, people say stuff and it's kind of a deception. Yeah, they have a 98%, but that's not all trial. Actually, most of the people that I'm not going to say most of the people that go to trial, but a high percentage of people who do go to trial, some of them get found not guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, me, myself, I've been found not guilty in a federal trial.
Okay.
So I'm 1 for 3. 2 convictions, 1 not guilty, but all federal trials.
Man, okay. Well, so you say you just got home from your second bid.
Yes, I did.
And what do you want us to know about that experience? Because so altogether, how many years have you done?
27. Damn. About 27.
I did fair time myself, but they call me a short time. I only did 13 months for selling CDs and movie. I was lightweight though.
Right.
That your past don't equal your future.
That's true.
So when I did my little 13 months, that felt to me like eternity for 13 months. So for 27 years fair time, let me see. When I was there, they was every Thursday was Chicken Thursday.
Still the same.
And every Wednesday was Hamburger Wednesday. Come on, man. So I know what I'm talking about now. So when I first got in there, Big Game, it was about to snow. Right? It was like in November of 2011. And so shortly after that, it was about to snow. And it was a guy I used to play chess with in there. His name was Psycho. Okay. So every day me and Psycho would play chess. But this particular day it started snowing. So Psycho came out of his cell and he was excited. He said, "Oh yeah." He said 4 more snows and I'm up out of here. Now I'm shell shocked at this point because
4 more years.
I said, did he just say 4 more snows? That means the snow got to come, it got to melt, it got to get hot again, it got to snow again, and he's excited. But to a person that's never had that experience before, trying to understand that psychology, he had already done about 8.
Right.
And so he could feel himself getting closer to the door. So I tell people all the time that if you never had that experience of being locked up, you really can't relate because it's a different world in there.
Of course.
And you got your max security, you got your medium, you got your low. See, I was a short time in a low because I'm a nonviolent offender, right? So never been in trouble before. So judge say, okay, well, you don't qualify for the drug program because I ain't never drank or smoked. Okay. Had I smoked or drank, the judge would have gave me the drug program. But he said, since you don't, I'm going to go ahead and sit you in Oxford, Wisconsin.
I was in Oxford.
What I call Oxford University.
I was there. That was the first joint they sent me to in 93.
And where I was in the low, of course. So you walk across, you go over there, and then it's the medium.
That's where I was at.
Okay, so you was in the medium. Now, in the medium at that time when I went, they say, they used to call me Brother Jones. They say, Brother Jones, it's 153 lifers over in the medium right now that ain't never coming home. He said, what kind of mindset you think they got? What level of tolerance do you think they have? And they know it ain't no possibility that they coming home. So during my time in that big game, it made me have a different level of appreciation for all the brothers that's locked up doing their time, and it made me empathetic. But what people don't realize is that while we in there doing time on the inside, our family is doing time on the outside.
No doubt. Everybody's doing time.
And they say the average length of a relationship between a man and a woman, when a person gets locked up, the average lifespan of their relationship after incarceration is about 3 years, because one or the other can't really hold on too much longer than that time unless they are exceptional and got this tremendous bond that keeps them together through it all, because it's hard for the people on the outside,
Right.
just like it's hard for the people on the inside. So I tell people, if you ever wanted to see what it would be like if you died, just get locked up, because that's going to let you know how the world feel about you when you off the scene. Who gonna come visit you? Who gonna put money on your books? Who gonna hold you down while you on the inside? So I wrote a song while I was in there called "The Letter That You Never Sent," because every day, you know, they make us come and they do mail call. You got to come sit in the cafeteria and wait for your name to be called, or they have a list on the wall, and if your name was highlighted, that means you got mail. And I saw grown men check this list every day. Their name wasn't highlighted. I saw grown men, white, black, Mexican, Hispanic, all of us. We in the child. You got to sit there and wait for them to just call your name if you got mail. Some guys got mail every day. Some guy got no mail at all.
That's right. I've seen it.
Then they upgraded the system and went to something called core links, right? So you could email, because that's faster.
Right.
Now you got to put money on your books just to be able to email. You email somebody on the outside, it take a couple hours for them to get it. They email you back, take another couple hours. But guys will log in to core links, and I will hear them walk up to that computer and say, let me see if anybody loved me today.
All the time. That's what they say.
Come on, man. See, so you know I know what I'm talking about. But when I saw the disappointment in these men's face, because I got mail occasionally during the time that I was there, but it made me empathetic toward those men, because everybody's story is different.
No doubt.
How you ended up in that situation is different. So it made me write a letter or a song called "The Letter That You Never Sent," on behalf of the guys that never got letters. And I wanted to write it to their family and their who's supposed to be close to them on the outside, to spark interest on both sides of the fence. So the guys on the inside, when they heard it, it was breaking them. They was crying. Some of them guys started crying with what I wrote in the song. And then when I got out and people on the outside heard the song, they said, I felt like you was talking to me, because my brother been locked up 12 years and I ain't never wrote him. My cousin did 6 and I ain't never sent him a letter. I say, you don't realize how much life a letter could do for somebody while they sitting in there during that time. Definitely. But I just wanted to get that as a little backdrop, since I did, I'm a little light, I ain't nowhere near on your level with 27 years, man. People don't understand what type of mind you have to be able to endure just doing time.
Right.
So talk a little bit about your experience in something like that. You could write volumes of books just from that experience alone on how to survive on the inside, right? Especially in a medium. Give a little insight, if you don't mind, as to what that was like. If you can go back in your mind to the first day that you went in there.
Well, I'm going to speak from the prison sentence that I just came home from.
Okay.
And you talk about mediums, lows, and camps.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely have been in the feds, so you know what's going on. But on this particular bid, I started off in the penitentiaries. That's the USP, United States Penitentiary. Those are your maximums that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
The first joint I went to was Terre Haute in Indiana.
Where Tyson was at.
No, Tyson was in the state.
Oh, really?
Tyson, if I'm correct, he was in the state joints of Indiana.
Okay.
So this is a federal prison where they have death. Actually, it's death row. That's what death row for federal inmates is. It's in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Okay.
So Terre Haute is a complex. You have a USP, you have a medium, and then you have a camp. They don't have any women's facility there.
Okay.
So that's where I went. When I first went there, I knew some people. And the first thing, when you get there, they ask for what they call paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And so being that I had known some of the guys, I had my PSI because I represented myself in trial. Right now, today, back some years, I don't know when they started it, but they start taking your PSI. Your PSI stands for, it was pre-sentence investigation report. Now it's a PSR, pre-sentence report.
Mm.
This report is gathered by your probation officer before you get sentenced, but after you get convicted. Because they do, basically, they do a report on you, and they present this to the judge. They ask about family. They put your history, your background in there.
Do me a favor, bring your mic a little closer. We don't need to miss none of this. See, some of y'all finna go do time. Some of y'all, you one decision away from this experience. So you would do well to listen and pay attention to what's being given right now. Because we ain't even got into the big game part. This is just a little introductory.
All right.
Part of it. So
the PSI, the probation officer, they do that and they get it to the judge. So in the penitentiary, that's like the standard. That's like first step. They want to know, check your paperwork, and your paperwork is basically, what are you in here for? Mm-hmm. They want to know the offense. They want to know the time.
The inmates.
Of course, right. And me personally, I'm from Indiana, so when I came in, there was two positions I could have played. I could have played homie time. I'm with the guys from Indiana. Mm-hmm. Or I could have played organizational time. I'm a retired four-corner hustler. Okay. So I chose to get on the homie time. When one of the brothers came to me, a vice lord brother, he came to me and he asked me, what was I going to do? I said, well, look, I'm going to pray about this. Because right now, I don't know if this is what God wants for me, because my first bid, I was on count all the time. Mm. So I kind of understood what was to be expected. So this time, and because I believe that I came in the system for another reason, for God's purpose, I told him, I said, well, let me think about it. Give me a few days. And he said, okay. Nonetheless, I still gave him my PSI. Yeah. So what they do when you give them the PSI, they check it. They read it. And what they're looking for is simply one thing. They want to know if you have cooperated with the government. They want to know if you a snitch. Mm-hmm. And as we say, they want to know if you hot.
Yeah.
And so when they read that, they clear you. If you're not hot, then you can walk the compound.
And if you are hot,
you got to go.
And when you got to go, that means you're not welcome in no society within the inmates that live there. Nobody is accepting you.
Ostracized.
And you open game, basically.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Ain't no question about that. Now, I used to hang out in the law library, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And a lot of the white guys tended to hang out in the law library. And they was always in there trying to figure out how to get appeals and fight their sentences and their case to, they learning the law, what we call the jailhouse lawyers.
Right.
You go to them and they getting paid because everybody got to find a way to make money. People don't know this, that there's an economy in prison, and you have to learn how to survive, because if you got long time, the money that's getting sent to you, that can run dry like that.
Gonna run dry.
And then what happens? So this part of you going in there is a critical piece for people to understand. They think that because you got a roof over your head, that you all right. You ain't got to worry about nothing in prison. They don't realize you got bills in prison too. You got to eat. You got to. It's certain things you got to do to be able to maintain in prison, and you got to work in prison. You got to have some type of employment. Either they going to employ you, or you going to create a job while you in there. So some guys get paid to iron your clothes, right, for your visits. Some guys get paid to clean your shoes. You got barbers in there. It's a whole ecosystem.
Definitely.
Inside the prison. So, but I wanted you, I know you started with your second bid, but what was, if you could go back, I know that's 27 years, but do you remember the first day? When I know it could be a blur. That's like asking somebody, do you remember when you was born?
The first day, as far as getting locked up, or first
Yes.
day? Yeah, I remember. I remember where I was arrested at. I kind of remember the situation, and
Well, for only as much as you want to talk about, because I don't want it to necessarily be personal as much as I want it to be the principles. Because somebody else that's watching us, that's listening, we want to give them as much game as we can so they can avoid these traps, so they can not have to deal with some of the things that you may have dealt with or that I dealt with that could slow them down in a progressive way in a life that they could live that's way more positive. So the day that you say you remember where you was when you got arrested,
the first time.
and what was, just take me into the mindset. It don't necessarily have to be the circumstance, but what was going through your mind?
Well, I was on Indianapolis Boulevard, and I had just come from a radio store. I had dropped my phone, and I jammed the antenna in there. So I had dropped the radio off at the store was called Triangle. It was a music store.
Okay.
Installed radios on Indianapolis, and I had a female friend with me. And I remember sitting at the light, and I was looking in my mirror, and it was traffic. So I was about 3 cars from the intersection. And I looked out my mirror, and I saw police coming through the cars. And at that time, I realized, okay, this is probably it, because they were looking for me. My incident with the case happened September 16th. I was coming through the airport. I got stopped with luggage, had 3 keys in it, but they didn't detain me that day because I pushed the issue to them that it was an illegal search and siege, that they didn't have a right to detain me or to take my bag.
Technicality.
Right. So they ended up letting me go because I played it smooth. Now back then in '92, I didn't even have an ID with me. At least that's what I told them. And when I finished the conversation with them, I had convinced them enough to let me go, but they detained my bag. So when they detained my bag, they told me they would get a scent search on it. They said if it was clean, they would send my bag to me, and if not, the rest would be, So that was September 16th. September 21st, I remember coming home.
5 days later.
Yeah. And I remember coming up to my street, and I was able to look through the houses and see my house. And when I looked through there, I saw brand new Crown Vics, gray, blue. And so I almost turned on the block, but because I saw them, I swerved and just kept straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I drove to the end of my block, and I had a neighbor of mine go down there. I'm like, hey, go down there and investigate that, see what's going on. And he said, it's a bunch of cars down there from Illinois, because that's what it's happened at. I was coming through Midway Airport.
Okay.
So when he told me what was down there and who was down there, I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So they had put a warrant out. They had run a scent search on the bag. It came back positive for narcotics, and I guess they opened it up, and they found what they found.
Yeah.
So they had a warrant out for me. And this how I knew that when I saw them on that day, which was October 6th, that was the day that I got arrested, October 6th, 1992.
So they weren't playing no games. September the 16th to October, they coming with a vengeance.
Yeah. So
And you done convinced them to let you go.
yeah, I did get away, and I had a partner with me that day. He never had any repercussions from that. It was two of us,
Mm.
and he actually had the bag because I was we was going through a process where I was showing him what to do,
Yeah.
and he was gonna be handling the business. So we going out of town, and he got stopped. We both got stopped, but he gave him a name. I don't know if he gave him a social security number or what, but either way, they never contacted him. He was never arrested. He never did any time. And when he got stopped with the bag, they started questioning him. You know, they have what they call drug source cities profiling. And so they said we fit a particular profile. So they approached us, him holding a bag, and they started asking questions. And at that time, I already knew what was going on, so I interjected in the conversation. The first thing they said is, "Whose bag is that?"
Mm.
So I jumped, "It's my bag." So then they directed their questions to me.
Because you knew how to handle it
Yeah,
to a degree.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he's so green.
I'm not gonna say he's green, but he probably wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
You know, he could have handled it, maybe not, but the bottom line is I was responsible,
And you stepped up.
and so I did what I believe I was supposed to do. When they started the questions, I jumped in there. It's my bag, and so we went from there. You know, they have these questions that they ask. They kind of trick questions, and if you don't ask them right, they say, "Oh, that was probable cause." You know, they ask you, "Well, whose bag is that?" I said, "It's mine." They said, "Did you pack that bag before you left your trip?" Well, the obvious question is, well, who else packed it?
Right.
But if you say that, then, oh, well, he said he didn't pack the bag. That's probable cause. So I have to say, well, of course I packed it. But at the same time, I'm admitting that I packed it. It's also admitting possession and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a trick. But if you don't answer those questions, they're going to keep you right then and there. You're not going anywhere.
Because of the probable cause.
Right.
And they have grounds to dig even deeper.
Right.
So you on Indianapolis Boulevard. We're going to fast forward and go back to you on Indianapolis Boulevard. You got somebody with you and you see them zooming in the traffic. What was going through your mind? Well, you knew, you kind of assumed they was coming for you at a certain point.
Right.
And how did you mentally prepare to deal with the repercussions?
I just sat still. I mean, I did a couple of things in the car, and I just prepared myself. And when they came up, surrounded the car, guns out, and I stepped out the car.
And what did the young lady that you was with, what was her? Was she aware that something like that could happen, or was she blindsided?
I mean, I don't think she was blindsided because if I'm correct, I told her that I had a warrant out, that they were looking for me because I was staying in a hotel off of Torrance Avenue. So I think she knew, but she wasn't expecting it nonetheless. She wasn't expecting that, no.
Okay. So now they got you, guns drawn, they done took you, and now they detain you at that point.
Right. He took me to, I think, Hammond Jail at that time, back then, Hammond Jail.
And so once you got let's go to when you got your sentence the first time. What kind of thoughts do you recall experiencing while being sentenced?
Well, it's kind of hard to remember back then exactly what I was thinking, but I would have to imagine me being me. I was just thinking, yeah, I'm going to beat this on appeal. You know, do what you got to do. I'll beat it on appeal.
So it sounds like to me, as a person not knowing you, that you kind of have always been, for lack of better words, a principled stand-up guy, as they would call it, that you ain't just doing your business, whether it was dirt or otherwise. People had a respect for you. This is the impression that I'm getting in this conversation right now.
I mean, I would hope so. You I can't really tell you what somebody else is thinking about me, but I would hope I had respect from people. But yeah, I do believe in the principles. I mean, that's who I am.
Okay. So you did that first bid. That you did your first bid. You got out. You dibbled and dabbled and got back in the game again.
About 2 years after I got out,
So what made you go back in?
back in the game.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, finances. I mean, for me, that's the only thing that would have driven me to get back in there. I tried to get it a mill, tried the electrician apprenticeship, tried a couple other things, and they didn't pan out. So just after a little while, opportunities were always there. I just chose not to take them.
Right.
That's why it was 2 years later. I was when I got released from my first bid, I was out for 4 years. But I started hustling 2 years later. I was doing things and had all the desire to do what was right.
Now you got back hustling because you wanted more or you needed more, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, I'm not. I understand the difference between a want and a need.
Yeah.
I had more than I needed, but I wanted more.
And that usually is enough. And for all of y'all that's wondering about this part, we're gonna call this the recidivism game, because the recidivism rate, meaning when a person is locked up, they get out, the chances of them going back is very high. And it's even higher for a person that goes back a second time to go back a third time. But the reason, one of the major reasons is just like you alluded to, Brother Game, that when you out, especially if you were used to fast money or getting it in bulk, and then you get out and you got to live, quote unquote, this square life on the up and up, where you making by the hour not even a tenth of what you could have got in one transaction. So it becomes very tempting to try to recapture when you was doing it big, or when you had all of the amenities, or like you said, more than enough. This is something that can be very tempting versus getting a job making 8, 10, 12, $15 an hour. And the way that it moved you made the decision. You say, okay, I'm going to jump back in. Did you decide I'm going to jump in and stay in, or I'm going to get in, I'm going to get out, I'm going to make a couple of moves? And
Well, it was, of course, it was get in and get out. I mean, it wasn't. I never intended for selling drugs to be a career job.
there's some guys that feel like, hey, man, they Teflon Dons out here.
I mean, if you're gonna be in this game doing that more than 5 years, I think you in the way. I mean, you're not getting that type of money.
Right.
I was trying to get the type of money where in a couple of years I would be done.
Yeah.
I'm chasing a couple of M's. So that's what I'm trying to do when I'm in the game. But no, I wasn't planning to stay in it. It was something I was gonna get in and go ahead and get into the real estate. Back then, I was just getting knowledge on real estate, but I'd always thought about it. So,
And what was it about real estate that made it attractive? It's interesting that you mentioned real estate, because people that know me and know what I do know that I'm involved in something called digital real estate, which we'll chop it up a little more about that as the conversation goes on. But where did your desire to be in real estate, when did that hit you?
well, probably talking to friends, maybe other hustlers, and probably from that, talking to other guys I've dealt with, and seeing the potential and the possibilities of doing real estate. Me personally, my dream has always been to build homes, affordable homes. So that's what I've always wanted to do. Probably would have started out on a smaller scale, purchasing properties, fixing them up, rehabbing them, maybe either selling them or renting them out. But like I said, the ultimate goal is to develop. That was my dream.
And the reason you wanted to be into the development side of it was what sparked that part, that aspect of real estate?
I believe the development part that came from while I was locked up. And I like to believe that a lot of things that I call dreams and desires, I like to believe they're inspired by God. So sometimes I'll say, I believe God gave me this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I believe. So I believe that development, I believe that's what that is. Something that God has given to me and put in my heart. And that's where I want to go with developing.
Okay.
Affordable housing, let's be specific. Affordable housing.
And so at that time, when you had got back in the game and you had this interest in becoming a real estate developer, what stopped you from just jumping off into that versus staying in the hustle game?
Well, going to jail. Going to jail stopped everything.
You can say that again. But your intentions, as far as your intentions to get in and get out and start dealing with these properties, you were not able to do it because it was interrupted by getting caught and dealing with laws, right?
Of course.
So now you in, and the second time around, how long was your bid again for the second time?
This time, had I stayed in there until August, it would have been 19 flat. So August 25th, that was the day I was arrested in 2004. So if I was to have stayed in there to August 25th of this year, it would have been 19 flat. I ended up getting released May 2nd. So a few months short of 19.
May 2nd of this year?
Yeah.
Golly, man. So you fresh out.
Yeah. Been out about 12 days.
Golly. So, man, bro, that's a long time, man. And there's guys that's in there that was in there longer than you.
Oh, most definitely. It was a guy in my unit. He'd been down 40. Couple of guys, the other guys been down 27, 28. I got some homies, from way back in the day. CCA, they been down for like 22. Guys off the deuces, 25. Guy named Sneak. Sneak was off of Fifth Avenue. He been down almost about 24. He came in, I think, at 21. He's 45 now.
Damn. So what would you say out of all the time that you did, give me 3 of the biggest lessons that you learned?
The biggest lessons that I learned.
3 of them, the top 3 that you feel would be valuable to somebody that's watching, that you learned. 3 things that's valuable and 3 things that you wish would not have taken place. We'll start with the valuable, because people think that because you locked up that there's not value in there, because you got a lot of brilliant guys up in there, right? Most of the brilliant ones among us, the enemy works to lock us up because we think outside the box automatically, which causes us to be bigger risk takers out in the street.
Right.
And we want more. We got that entrepreneurial spirit about us to want to get out of this trap, or as they call it now, to get out the trap and do something bigger, because we naturally know, like you said, God gave it to us to know that we supposed to be great. But the resources sometimes that we see in front of us are not always the best options, which coincidentally, they call it, trap music, and I'm trapping, not realizing you trapping all right, you in the trap, but who set the trap?
Right.
So when you got in there, out of all of that time, what's 3 of the biggest lessons that you learned that helped you, even up to this day?
I would probably have to say the first is I learned just be me.
And what was so big? What's so big about that concept of just being you?
Being me is not trying to be somebody else, not faking. So that's when I'm in there, I'm me. I'm not tripping off of you, what you doing, who you are. I'm me. I'm gonna be me, and I'm gonna be the best man that I can be. And that's how I lived every day.
And how did that benefit you being your authentic self? Because we live in what I like to call right now, and we live in what I call a capidemic. We was in a pandemic, But now we done got out of the pandemic, and if you capping, you lying.
Right.
So I say we in a capidemic now. Lying is at an all-time, it's at an all-time high. Everybody's lying. They lying online. If they women, they lying. The butts ain't real. The lashes ain't real. The hair ain't real. The chest ain't real. You got guys getting whole heads of hair put on top of them that ain't real, right? They fake beards. Man, we in a capidemic, bro. It's bad out here. Nobody wants to be themselves. Everybody is playing follow the follower. So for you to take that as your biggest lesson, to just be yourself.
Yeah, because I can't be anybody else.
Man, that is.
I don't know how to do that. Now, that's when problems would come if I try to be you.
Well, see, you only been home 12 days, so you're going to have to get a big shot of this truth to understand that most of the people out here, they trying to live somebody else's life.
I don't know how to do that.
You got an advantage then from all that time of being yourself. Now with social media and the internet and Web3 and the metaverse and all of these different forms of technology, if you can continue to be yourself, whether online or offline, that will make you one of the, what I like to call the last of the Mohicans, one of the realists, right? And this authenticity is really what the people need, but they are afraid because they so busy playing follow the follower. They don't even know how to access who they really are. So they busy looking at a video. They looking at a TV show. They looking at movies. They looking at a article that they read online, and they trying to live somebody else's life for real, for real. So if that's one of the biggest things, what's two other things that you would say that were valuable lessons?
Family. Well, let me go back. I learned to not put expectations on people. And I learned that from a book, a spiritual book that I read called Watchman Nee. And and also from the RDAP program. But I had to learn how to govern my emotions. I had to learn how to accept disappointments. And the way I learned to do that was I don't even put expectations on you. That way, if you don't do something, I'm not tripping. I'm not mad. I wasn't expecting it anyway.
That's a big deal right there, because we live in a time of entitlement where everybody is expecting that the world owes them something. So they don't feel like they got to put no work in. If they rapping just because they feel like they can say a couple of lines, that automatically qualifies them to get a record deal or to blow up in the music game. If they an entrepreneur, they ain't got to put no money up.
Right.
They just gonna tell you their idea, and you supposed to go in your pocket and finance the whole thing. That's this sense of entitlement. But the fact that you look at it and saw it from a different vantage point, you mentioned two books. What was the name of those books again?
One of them was Watchman Nee. That's the author, but it was called The Spiritual Man.
And it helped you to deal with and be able to manage your emotions.
Of course, yeah.
And why was that beneficial?
Because it helped me to be able to accept reality every day and understand that reality is not going to be the way I want it to be. You know, in the drug program, I think that RDAP was probably the next best thing to getting saved, accepting Christ, because that RDAP program helped me it gave me the tools to understand who I am, why I think the way I think, and do the things that I do.
And what do you feel like was the root of why you were thinking the way that you were?
You know, it was self, walking in the flesh. You know, in the flesh. I believe it's walk in the spirit, or I can walk in the flesh. If I walk in the spirit, then I follow what God wants me to do. But when I walk in the flesh, then I follow what I want to do.
And how are you able to tell the difference?
Because I believe I have a spirit man inside of me, and my conscience bears witness to that. So when my conscience say is wrong, it's wrong. If my conscience doesn't bear witness against it, then I go with it.
Now, there's some of us out here that's so dead, we don't even have a conscience.
And that's true.
And the Honorable Minister Louis
Well,
Farrakhan,
I believe everyone has a conscience. It's whether you want to obey it or not.
but I would just say it this way. He said that he asked a question. He said, would you knowingly kill a messenger of God? And mostly everybody that got asked that question would say, no, I wouldn't knowingly do it. But we knowingly kill the messenger of God within self, like you said, that tells us this is right, this is wrong. Well, in order for us to do the wrong, we have to silence the voice inside that tells us it's wrong. And we do that by rationalizing disobedience. We justify. Well, I know I shouldn't be. I know I shouldn't rob, old boy, but man, I'm out here hurting, and my family got to eat, so somebody got to get it. Might as well be him. So we just rationalized that wrong conduct, and it ends up biting us in the butt later on down the road. And so, as you got stronger in your spirit, man, and learning how to manage your emotions, if somebody felt that they didn't know how to do that, you got high heads running around. They in the club, they in the street, they in the car, they in a relationship. What's something you would say to them that you feel might be able to impact them to get them to look within themselves and tap into that spirit, man?
Well, as far as that spirit man, I believe first and foremost, one must accept the spirit as what we call in my church, getting saved, accepting Christ, allowing God to live inside of you. According to what I believe, if you don't have that, then it's going to be hard to tap into that spirit man that I'm talking about.
And how do you? You say by accepting Christ or getting into God. So a person that feel like they out there and they ain't even listening to what you saying right now because they trying to get money. So how do you tap into them from your perspective to get them to even entertain that idea?
All I can do is tell them my story. I mean, I was getting money. I was going to church on Sunday, going to church Sunday night, going to Bible study, and I had bricks at the house.
So how did you reconcile that double-mindedness, if you will? Because the scriptures say a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways.
I mean, there's more to it than that statement that people hear, but I don't think I was double-minded because I was fully focused on God, but yet I had not been able to control self. I don't want to get too deep into the spiritual stuff, but I believe in spirit, soul, and body.
But ain't nothing wrong with it. See, on Con After Dark, you don't know this, but
Okay.
on Con After Dark, I don't dismiss God
Okay.
in the podcast because you can't do nothing without him. If it was not for him, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So
That's
I
right.
don't shy away from it or act like you think I'm a square or somebody think I'm a cornball. Man, I don't care nothing about that because I know God is real in my life, and I ain't trying to say that's what you got to do.
Right.
But I'm not going to ashamedly deal with the God that's present in my life and that has helped to guide me and give me wisdom beyond my years. So, no, as deep as you want to go in the spirit, man, that's what this is for. You got the opportunity to talk because it might be one person that's listening to you that you could cause a change in that person's life. In digital real estate, we call that impact. So think of it from that vantage point. Think about that one brother that's sitting out there listening right now. That one sister that feel like they at their wits end. What do they need to do? How do they need to do it? What do you recommend? If they're at home, the lights finna get cut off today. Ain't no food in the refrigerator. People looking like food in the street. They finna go get it, man. So what would you advise?
I believe in a person's life. At some point, God has reached out to all of us. At some point. something in our life, whether it's a tragedy, whether it's a joyful moment, God is going to be the one who makes the call.
And how do you know when he's calling?
Only you can know that.
Mm.
I mean, I could say conscience, I could say this, that, but I believe each individual, they'll get to a point, because God, when he wants to get your attention, he's going to get it. And you're going to acknowledge it.
That's a fact.
Now, whether you want to deny it or not, but you're going to acknowledge God.
And your name, some people call you Big Game, and that's an acronym too, right?
Well, it wasn't an acronym at first, but over the years in prison, when I started thinking about how I could let my life be about God and not just about me. And one day I just set up, I came up with an acronym for it.
And
Big
Game stands for what?
In the new context of God, believe in God, which is B.I.G, believe in God. And the game is G.A.M.E, that's God answered my everything.
So believe in God, because God answered my everything.
Right.
And about what year did you come to this acronym and this self-realization?
It was probably maybe 2007, 2008, after I read the book, The Spiritual Man, which now start tapping into what I believe is inside of me.
It's called The Spiritual Man or The Spirit
The
Man?
Spiritual Man.
And what's some of the key takeaways you got from that particular book for it to be as impactful as it?
The book taught me that we are spiritual beings. Well, we're physical beings, but we are composed of three parts: spirit, soul, and body.
Mm.
The spirit being the part of us that relates with God or God's spirit. The soul is the part of us that's the mind, will, and the emotion. That's where self resides at.
In the soul.
Mind, will, and emotion. That's where we have autonomy to make our own decisions.
Okay.
And then the body, which is the flesh, which people call the lower self. Mm-hmm. He is going to obey one or the other. He's either going to obey the spirit or the soul man. And the soul man is self. So you either got the spirit in control or you got self in control, and the body is going to obey only one of those.
Okay. So, but the root of it from your perspective and what was in this book deals with thought originating basically your actions. As we say, thought precedes the action.
Of course.
So the better you can control and manage your thoughts, the more favorable your actions end up being.
Of course.
'Cause I got a wristband on right now. It's one of the first things that a product that I made, the wristband says you become what you think about.
Right. You're only going to do what you tell your body to do. Your body is going to act based on your thought process.
And it was a second book that you mentioned. You mentioned The Spiritual Man.
I don't know.
And then it was
another book. I don't know if I mentioned the name, but the only other book is the Bible.
Okay.
So
once you accepted that, what was it that made you come to that realization?
Once I accepted what?
About the spiritual man, the having God present in your life while you were incarcerated. Walk me through that part.
Well, after reading the book and understanding the book.
How did you get the book? Somebody just said, check it out. No, you was in the library.
In the particular unit I was in Terre Haute, it was a unit called the Life Connection. And they had a library. Now, the Life Connection, it was a program, I believe, one of George Bush's programs, one of his favorite ones that he supported. Anyway, a Life Connection program, it was about that. It was a faith-based program. And it had many different faiths there. And we were all in the unit, and it was supposed to teach tolerance. Okay, but anyway, the book was in a library. The library had information on all type of faith bases. Mm-hmm. Everything from Buddhism to Islam to Hinduism to witchcraft, Wicca. So I went up there and the book was there. That's how I became aware of the book.
And what attracted you to that book?
The name, Spiritual Man.
And that sparked the curiosity.
Yeah, because it's a spiritual man. What is that?
And so you start reading this book, and the transformation within starts to take place for you.
Right.
How did guys that you were locked up around, did they start to treat you different? Was it a difference in your everyday living with the cellies or the inmates or the other prisoners that were there? How did they receive you as this change was happening in real time?
I mean, it was pretty much the same. I mean, they saw the same person. I mean, before I read the book, I mean, I always maintain a certain decorum, respect for myself,
Right.
to respect another man. So when I did that, when I read the book, it just helped me to, like I said, learn to govern my actions more, how to respond. You know, they say a situation can happen, but it's how you respond. So my thinking, and I mean, everything from in the joint to relationships to dealing with the people who told on, I mean, just everything.
That's deep. And did that make your time easier for you to deal with? Because this was 2007. We're in 2023 now. So you're talking 16 years.
Yeah, it made the time easier because every day I woke up, I wasn't miserable. When things happened, I didn't take offense. I didn't get angry. I understood it. I processed what happened. And then I deal with it. I don't put too much energy into things I can't control. And then the drug program, and I have to say this, the RDAP, it taught me one thing that I always remember. It said, it was a cognitive thinking class that I took, and it talked about our thinking. And it said it was different things that we talked about, but one of them was, it's 2 parts to a problem, 3 parts to a problem. The way it is, that's the reality. The way you want it, and the difference between the two.
That's cold right there. Say that one more time now for the people in the back. 3 parts to a problem.
The way it is, that's just reality.
Which most people, that's the first thing most people don't want to deal with.
Okay? The way you want it.
Okay.
And the difference between the two, which is the difference between reality and the way you want it.
Perception.
So really, there isn't a problem. There's never a problem. People say it all the time. Man, it's a problem. No, there is no problem. The issue is the way you want it is different from reality. And that doesn't make it a problem.
When I went to my 2-year college, I took business law. And my instructor told me, and the rest of the class, she said, in life and in law, people have an inability to spot the real issues. And because they can't spot the issue, they can't deal with the issues. So they end up dealing with other things, or as you just said, the way you want it to be versus how it actually is. So a lot of times in a court case or a civil case, the lawyers go back and forth and they deal to the best of their ability. They argue the facts, not the emotions. And because we have difficulty managing the facts, or how we handle the facts, it causes us to be in bad situations. So you said made your time easier for you to just deal with reality, govern yourself better, manage yourself better. And now that you've been home for not even 2 weeks, what are some of the major changes that you see now since you've been home for this short period of time versus when you went back in? What's changed? What looks favorable? What is it like for you coming into a new reality with all these iPhones and social media and all this kind of stuff. Because when you went in 2007, there was no social media.
2004.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't no social media in
No,
2004.
2004. No Facebook. No camera phones. We weren't texting. The only texting I did was with a two-way Motorola.
Come on with it, man.
I still had the flip Nextel with the chirp on it.
Come on now.
So
Jay-Z say Motorola two-way page me. But now that you out and you see these iPhones and Androids and cinematic cameras and social media, what is your perspective?
it's just it's life. It's technology. It's growth and development.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's change. I mean, it's life. You're gonna be here today and you're gonna be there tomorrow. It's progress. That's what it represents. It's progress for humanity.
And what are some of the things you see for yourself now that you're home?
Oh, I see a whole lot. I mean, it's many possibilities and opportunities that I see. I mean, I've often been told I can see what others don't see.
Mm. And just in general or to things in particular?
Generally, I mean, the whole spectrum. And when I look back at things that I've said I wanted to do in the past, you know, other people they didn't see it. Like I'll just give you an example. I remember back in 2002, I was talking to my wife and her cousin about going to McDonald's and opening up a delivery service, specifically at this time just for McDonald's, delivering food to the home. And you know, when I mentioned it, they were like, nah, you know, they ain't really, you know, they ain't like give me a kick like go ahead or any feedback. They didn't see it. I get locked up some years later, and there it is.
Uber Eats.
Everybody delivering food to the houses. Yeah.
And so when you saw that thought that you had as a reality, how did that impact you to see it as a multi-million-dollar business, even billions?
Right.
To know that you had that idea before it was a thing.
I mean, it just let it confirm that sometimes I do have a good idea. That maybe I am a visionary. Maybe I can see things that others don't see. You know, so
Well, that I'm into three big pillars that I focus on with this podcast is I call them the three ships: entrepreneurship, relationships, and stewardship. How well do we manage things and people that are under our care? So, in studying in my entrepreneurial journey, I forget the gentleman that said it, but reports have shown that the average person has 4 ideas a year, which, if they were to act on any one of those 4 ideas, they would become financially independent.
mm,
And they have at least 4 on average every year. But most of us don't move on it. Like you say, you had the idea, but what stopped you from pursuing it? What made you not go into it? And a lot of times people that are right around us, because they don't see what we see, they don't feel what we feel, it doesn't make sense to them. So they'll try to talk you out of it faster than you can talk yourself into it. So what do you see yourself doing now?
I came out the door. My intention is to get involved in freight business, the logistics, trucking industry. I was going to get me a 1-ton dually, deal with the hot shots, or possibly auto transport with a 1-ton dually.
And a dually is what?
It's look like a pickup truck with the 2 wheels in the back on each side. So it's 4 wheels in the back.
Okay.
I call it a big butt truck.
And what made you? What about the real estate? You
Well,
still got
that's
your eye on
yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, see, this is the plan of coming out.
Yeah.
This is okay. What are you gonna do when you get out? How are you gonna eat? So, what's gonna be your first job? And that's what it was gonna be because that's what I didn't have when I came out the first time. When I came out the joint the first time, I didn't have a plan. That's why I went back.
Mm. And now you are a lot more focused.
Oh yeah, I went after 27 years of life sentence. I think I've been slapped right.
Some people don't get it. They be in longer than that.
I don't know. After guys I know, when you get to doing time like that, it changes a person. Now all they want to do is get out and live right. I mean, that's 19 years, 19 years straight. Guys who've been doing that time, the ones I know, now I don't know who they were before, and I don't know how serious they are, but they do not have a desire to continue in criminal activity. They just want another chance to get out.
Mm. While you were in there, if it was one thing that you could say was the worst thing you saw or experienced, what would it be?
The way these guys act in there, and I don't want to just say younger guys, just the fakeness. That right there, that's just guys just fake. You know, they trying to be somebody else, and
I told you we're in a capidemic.
The younger guys, you know, with the pants that sag and this, and in prison with their butts out. It's oh well, I'm gonna put it like this. I think the saddest thing I saw is just a man, a male's lack of ability to be a man.
In what sense?
Responsibility first and foremost. Nobody wants to accept responsibility for their actions.
Mm.
So I think that's the first criteria of being a man. You know, people always like to say, be a man, be a man. Well, first you got to accept responsibility.
Which most, not only on the inside do they not, most on the outside don't want to. And it's interesting to me that you only been home for 12 days and you got these ideas. And with technology, like we were talking about a little earlier, the program that I'm involved with is by a young brother he'll be 30 the next month. His name is brother B.I.G. He created something called digital real estate, wherein that's where you take your social media accounts. Think of Instagram. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to be a developer. So think of your Facebook account as a plot of land, right? And every time you put a post on Facebook, that is like a piece of property. And if it's valuable enough, people will want to continue to consume that content, and you can ultimately monetize from that content. Now, with you having a 27-year bid or 27 years worth of bids under your belt,
Right.
that is a lifetime of experience, literally, that the average person does not know. And just by you being able to tell your story your way in your voice, I'll give an example. There's a guy I posted on my Instagram, and I think I titled it How Not to Go to Prison, or 13 Things to Know Before You Go. And he went line by line of what you got to experience in prison. He didn't realize the value of his experience in going until he put it on social media, when so many people gravitated to what he was talking about because they never lived that life. You could literally write volumes of books, you could give trainings that people would pay you to tell that story. of not only while you were in there, but before you went in there. That you could utilize these platforms, your Facebook, your YouTube, your social media. This would be called building your digital real estate. And you could impact people all over the world right from your cell phone. Like I've been able to do, right? And you being able to clearly talk to the guys that's coming up behind you, those things that you mentioned, the lack of responsibility. Well, what are ways that a person could be responsible? You might be able to put together an ebook, right? Which is with 10 ways that a person could assume responsibility. And somebody will buy that book from you because they literally, genuinely don't know how to be responsible. But if Big Game wrote the book on how to be responsible, if Big Game wrote the book on how to govern yourself from experience, somebody will pay for that experience. Because, as Brother Ben would say, would you rather get shot or learn from somebody who got shot? Most people say they rather learn from somebody who got shot. But guess what? If you don't tell it, they can't learn it. And another brother I posted, his name is JT, the Bigger Figure. He was shot. He was feeding people in the projects in Atlanta, and some of the guys he trusted tried to rob him. And they unloaded a Draco on him and shot him point blank in the midsection, but didn't kill him. So he documented when he went in the hospital. He recorded it. He made a little hood movie out of it.
Right.
But he was in his car, and he was saying, man, I'm going to tell you what. If you ever get shot, don't panic. If you ever get shot, don't drink water because you're going to get thirsty. But when you drink the water, it's going to cause your body to respond a certain way. So when I reposted that clip, he talked for about 30 minutes, and I took 60 seconds where he was talking about what to do if you get shot. And I made a post out of it. And I got over 100,000 views because he educated people in his own hood way of what to do if you ever got shot. And it's these life lessons that you sitting on. You said, well, I'm trying to figure out, or I got a plan on what I'm going to do. I would just say as your brother to encourage you, don't discount your experience because your experience is a world of education. Now you just have to marry that experience with the technology, not realizing that you got it sitting right in the palm of your hand and you could go all over the world sitting right in your living room. And that's the beauty of social media. Because to the world, you might be one person, but to one person, you could be the whole world. And they be like, man, I follow Big Game all the time, man. I'm on your YouTube channel. I'm on your Instagram. I'm on your Facebook. Man, you be giving me a lot of game, man. You the father I never had. And you're just able to reach so many more people with this device in your hand. And we can chop it up a little more about it offline. Like when I walked in the door, I saw you talking about something that you saw in terms of content with music, going over it, expressing your vantage point. Well, can't nobody express your vantage point like you can. Now you just have to learn the skills, right? Even when you was locked up, when we was locked up, there were skill sets that we had opportunities to learn, whether it was a trade, whether it was how to build things, how to make products. And all of those things are ways that you literally could generate income, impact people, make a living, and follow your purpose, all simultaneously. So I just wanted to drop that on you. I know we ain't got that much longer on this particular podcast. I'm enjoying the conversation. I hope you are too. But before we go, is there anything that you want the people to know about you? Is there any advice that you want to give anybody? If Ant has something to say or Big Game has something to say to that person that's watching you right now, what are 2 or 3 things you would tell them?
I like to always start off everything with just thank God, be appreciative. I think when people, myself, I like to speak on myself because I can't speak about what other people, what they think or what they ought to do. I can tell you about what I did. But just be thankful every day, just grateful. Because I've learned when I'm grateful, I don't complain.
Right.
And actually, going back to the program that I took, when I talked about the cognitive thinking, as I was thinking about it, they were talking about how not to relapse, and they were talking about errors in our thinking. And blaming is one. Um, and I think the other one was dealing with um, three parts of a problem. But I believe in faith. I think that's important for me. That was my foundation. I believe that when I came in, I tell some people before I came in, I knew I was coming to jail. I believe that I had a vision that I was going to jail. I saw the prison that I was in. And what's funny is that the prison that I saw I was in back before I was locked up, that's the prison I went home from.
Mm.
Yeah. There's some more things about what I saw in visions that came true. But faith is first and foremost. Faith, not blaming, accepting reality, well, responsibility. And once again, in the program, responsibility was simply this. This was our definition, is living life on life's terms. That's being responsible.
And what does that mean to you?
That means living life on life terms, being responsible. That means, for example, if the speed limit says 55, I do 55, maybe 57. But I don't do 65 or 75 because now when the police pulls me over and write me a ticket, now I'm going to be upset about that. But all I had to do was live life on life terms. Life terms say I have child support that owed to my the mother of my first two girls, and I was paying it before I was incarcerated, and it stopped once I got locked up, of course. So it ended up back pay. So now I owe like 24,000.
Mm.
But that's fine. She deserves that, and that's hers. So when I got out, probably the second day, I went out to the county and I put 200 on the child support. That's living life on life's terms. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm.
That's responsibility. So living life on life terms. If it's just dealing with issues that says this is what you're supposed to do. I'm just trying to think of a couple more examples that's just simple.
Some people I've heard them say that responsibility is also what is your ability to respond? What is your response ability? Do you have the ability to respond to the things that life throws your way in a productive, progressive manner?
Of course, me personally, but I think everybody does. Of course, we have the ability to respond to the best of our ability. If your best of your ability is only to a level of 2, then you do that to the best of your ability. I believe in going hard. I believe in giving my all, whether it's in the streets, whether it's whatever. I mean, that's what I do. I put forth my all. I'm not a procrastinator.
So what 2 things would you tell somebody to avoid going to a correctional facility? What would you tell them right now?
First, I'd say avoid the drugs because they getting high up in there. They smoking now. The big thing is paper deuce. That's what they smoking.
And what is that?
That's K2, whatever. That's
synthetic.
Yeah, sprayed on the paper. That's what they smoking now.
So they just spray some paper.
It comes however they get it. That's what it is. It's chemicals on the paper. I've even heard as much as straight up Raid roach spray on the paper, dried up, and that's what they're smoking.
Inside.
Of course.
They got something out here right now called Trank, which is animal tranquilizer.
Actually, I thought that was animal. Well, it was actually elephant tranquilizer. That's something else I'm thinking
Yeah,
about.
they hitting them. It's called Trank dope. And what happens when the person smokes it, it literally kills the the flesh. So you got people's fingers falling off, and they don't even know the finger fell off. They leaning over like they on heroin and methadone combined, and it's just like flesh eating because they took this trank dope. It's big in New York. It's big in Philadelphia. It's going crazy. So you would tell somebody to make sure that they stay away from drugs of any type.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. Once you start getting high, you start being irresponsible. You're running up debt. You're not focused. And then the other thing I would probably tell them is, be yourself.
Mm.
I mean, I can't stress that enough because when you go in there, so many different people, and if you are the type of person that you're not comfortable with being you, you definitely is like you're gonna find you an avatar. That's what you're gonna find, and you're gonna try to live in that avatar through somebody else, and eventually you're gonna get exposed. You're always gonna get exposed when you faking.
This is a fact, and the world is full of fakeness on the outside. I'm telling you, it's at an all time high. And now that you home, I would like to congratulate you for first of all being able to endure it. Two, for being here. Three, your attitude of positivity, productivity, responsibility is a big thing, especially with us as black men. And you got people that's watching, you got people that's rooting for you, you got people that's not rooting for you. But as long as you have that spiritual man developed within you, you have a game plan, you understand that the components of what makes problems, how to deal with them, how to address them, I think you're gonna be all right, man. So, what is in closing? What's one piece of big game outside of being yourself that you think somebody should strive to be or to do? What's one piece of big game you could give them?
God, man, I can't say enough about that. I got my life back. I was doing a life sentence.
Mm.
So I hadn't had these conversations with God. It was, the whole purpose of all this was simply one thing, and that was to glorify Him. So, God is everything, and that's why I'm here. And if I have to scream His name every day, I don't have a problem with it because it's by God's grace that I'm here. This guy's gonna die in prison. They have life, and that's what those folks mean. You're gonna die in prison.
Mm.
And I had that. They told me you go on the computer, you look up my name, you didn't see 30, you didn't see 40, you didn't see 50. Because even with a 50-year sentence, I could have gotten out. I know dudes who have completed a 50-year sentence.
So, how did you get out from under a life sentence?
I had
Natural life, we talking about.
right, LIFE. When you look on the computer and it said sentence, I didn't have numbers, I had letters. LIFE. That was my sentence. So it wasn't do 20, good behavior, do 30, good behavior, do 40, good behavior, do 50, good behavior. It was life, no parole.
And but yet you on this podcast
Oh, no doubt.
outside.
That's right.
And how did that happen?
Well, we got to go back to 87. That's when they came out with the crack law. And the crack law was simply if you had 1 gram of crack cocaine, you would get the same sentence as a person who had 100 grams of powder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was the disparity. You have 1 gram of crack, I have 100 grams of powder. We get the same time. That was passed in 87. That was called the crack law. You have 5 grams of crack, that's a mandatory 5 years. He can have a half a key of powder, that's 5 years. Same sentence. 5 grams and a half a kilo. So for 23 years, they talked about, Congress, politic, and this and that. They said over the years that the law was racially biased. It was unfair. But it took them 23 years before they reduced the ratio. And when they reduced the ratio, they still didn't make it equal to powder, because they had been saying crack and powder is the same thing. Crack cocaine is just simply cocaine powder with baking soda cooked in water. That was crack. What we were selling,
Right.
what I was selling, that was what they called crack. But for the sake of the crack that they wanted to give you the enhanced penalty for, that was supposed to have been a whole nother mixture of drugs with different chemicals in it. So truthfully, I didn't get sentenced for the crack that they had originally created the law for. I just had cocaine base.
And so that loophole was found.
Okay, so over the years, they talked about that, right? Because scientists proved that there is no difference between cocaine base and powder.
Right.
So eventually, they changed the law when Obama was president.
Yeah.
They changed the law August 3rd, 2010. And they reduced the ratio from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. So now it was, if you had 1 gram of crack, you get the same sentence as a person with 18 grams of powder. It went from 100 grams to 18. So it was still unfair.
Right.
But it was better.
And
So,
as a result of that, your sentence was reduced.
Well, in part. Now, the difference is when they passed that law in 2003 of August, I was already incarcerated. No, they passed the law in August 3rd of 2010. I was already incarcerated. They didn't make the law retroactive. And retroactivity means that the law applies to those who were sentenced before the law became a law.
Right.
So it didn't apply to me.
Okay.
When Donald Trump became president in 2016, when Obama left, he ended up passing a bill in 2018 called the First Step Act. In that bill, they made the Fair Sentencing Act, which was what Obama passed. You had the Fair Sentencing Act, Obama, and then you had the First Step Act, which was Trump. In the First Step Act, they made the Fair Sentencing Act retroactive. Now it applied to me.
Who would have thought the president they love to hate would have passed something, and that's really monumental because so many of us brothers have fell victim under these draconian drug laws.
That's what they call them too, draconian.
Yeah, man, you back in the Viking era, and it's all by design to get these brilliant minds out of the way, to stop them from being able to continue to build their world at our expense.
Right.
So that's just so we back at trapping again.
Right.
And so once that law, that First Step Act, made it the Fair Sentencing Act retroactive, you then fell up under it, and it gave you that window of light.
Right.
And
now I have an avenue to get relief, to get my sentence reduced.
And so what before we close, what steps did you have to take?
You have to go through the court. You have to file a motion requesting relief, and you have to state your reasoning for that relief.
Did you actually do it, or did you have an attorney to do it?
This time, well, no, actually, I did start the process because, like I said, I represented myself pro se on this case, the trial and everything. So when this came out, I initiated the motion pro se. They gave me a lawyer, but his mentality, he tried to just get me to take 360, drop it down from life to 30 years. And I told him, no. I said, if that's what you think, then I'll do it myself, because I'm not doing 30 is not what I'm supposed to have. I'm supposed to get immediate release.
And how long did it take from the time you filed the motion to actually be released?
The law was passed in December 2018, the First Step Act. I filed my motion for relief in April of 2019. So,
And when did it become a reality that you were going to be released?
I mean, it was a reality to me from the beginning because I know what the law says. I know what's supposed to happen.
And you had the faith to fight it.
Of course.
But when you actually received documentation, did you get a release date?
No, I didn't get a release date. I talked to. So the process was I filed in April of 2019. The government responded. Of course, they said I'm not eligible. It sat on the judge's desk for a whole year until July of 2020. He denied it. So I appealed it, filed a notice of appeal. They gave me a briefing schedule. I filed my brief. On the government's response, the government conceded, and they went against what the court said. They said the court was wrong. So my attorney and the government, they did a stipulation to just have the case remanded back to court. And that was in October of 2020.
Okay. So when it went back to court, you still now are dealing with it, and you finally got the decision that you would be released when?
Well, once again, I never got a decision on when I would be released. After I appealed it,
yeah,
and it got remanded back to the district court, I had to start the process over again. Now I had to file back to the court stating that we are back before you because this is on a remand, and we had to do an argument again, which that's when I hired an attorney. Well, I hired an attorney to do the appeal.
Okay.
So after he won that, then I hired another attorney to do the motion for the relief again. And so that was the beginning of 2021 of March. That's when I hired an attorney. It took her 9 months to put the motion together, which was about December of 2021. We filed our motion. March of 2022, the government responded. It sat on the judge's desk another year until now, 2023.
Do you know how many brothers that could benefit just from that process of what steps to take but don't know what to do? That's where something or somebody like you could be so valuable to help to give that guidance step by step as you did it in your own experience that will help them. But we'll talk more about that to chop it up after this podcast, man. Y'all got to stay tapped in, man. This is big game right here. Game, recognized game. But I told y'all we was going to have big game on here. Whenever you talking about the judicial system and you dealing with the penal codes and you dealing with the Bureau of Prisons and you dealing with fair time, man, this is serious because it's brothers that's locked up that ain't, like he said, that ain't never coming home. And one slip of a pen, one slip of a judge's sentence, one lawyer not doing something right, man, and you could be buried. And that is a reality that many of us are unaware of because we not sitting on the other side of that sentence. So I appreciate you, man, and thank you for chopping it up with us on Con After Dark. Shout out to B.I.G for having you up in here. Any closing remarks that you got before we get about this thing?
I enjoyed the podcast. I appreciate you guys calling me up here to even talk about this. I never thought that my experiences could be used in this way, but I've always believed that my life can be an example to, as I say, glorify God. And however I can help somebody else, I'm here.
Amen.
If you believe my life will help someone else, then I'm down for it.
Hey, from prison to podcast.
That's right.
Hey, man, y'all make some noise one time for my man Big Game in the building, man. This has been another edition of Con After Dark. How can they get in contact with you? Any kind? We got any contact set up yet?
I'm on Facebook right now, but I'm still navigating through that.
Yeah. We'll come back at y'all. Y'all gonna know when we step outside in these internet streets, man. So y'all stay tuned. I'm Young Con of Dime, man, and this has been another edition of Con After Dark. And we'll holler at y'all. Y'all leave something in the comments, man. give us shout outs, encourage my brother, man. Tap in with us. Let me know what you thought about today's podcast. And if you trying to get any books, any merchandise, if you want to be on the podcast, text podcast to 219-200-9949. But you got to have something valuable to offer to the people in dealing with relationships, entrepreneurship, or stewardship. You got to have something good, man, that you're going to be able to share with the people. Otherwise, I can't do nothing for you. You might as well just keep on doing TikTok dances. But if you're really trying to make a difference, man, tap in with me. Get at me. Young Connor Don, 219-200-9949. And make sure you go to CoachCon.life and you can see a lot of the other stuff I got going on. And with that being said, we up at this thing. You did.